Close up, we were getting to know a lot of different Republicans running for Congress in New Hampshire's 1st District. And one who's bringing a lot of conservative energy to this race is former Trump administration official Karoline Leavitt, who is connecting with us this morning. Thank you for joining us, Karoline.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
All right, and full disclosure to our viewers, Ms. Leavitt worked here at WMUR in a part-time capacity before moving on to the Trump White House. So, Karoline, first off, just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be back with you now as a candidate. I am a born and raised Granite Stater. I was born and raised in the town of Atkinson in a business family. Grew up working at my family's business. We owned an ice cream stand in my hometown. My family's also been in the car business for 30 years. So I grew up here and then went on to St. Anselm College. I took advantage of every opportunity I could at St. A's. I originally went to play softball. Quickly learned it wasn't athletics I was interested in. It was politics and media and news. And that's largely because of our First in the Nation primary, which is so crucial to our livelihood here in the state of New Hampshire, our economy as well. We need to protect that at all costs. But following my experience at St. Anselm College, I earned a job in President Trump's White House. I wanted to work for him. I believed in his America First agenda. And so I actually went on whitehouse.gov and applied for a position. I was accepted. And when I got there in 2018, I worked my way up the ranks and ultimately served as an assistant press secretary in the White House press office alongside Kayleigh McEnany, the former press secretary for President Trump. She was a rock star and is a great mentor. I helped prepare her for her briefings. I had the opportunity to brief President Trump many times before he took the podium, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. It was the honor of a lifetime. I learned a lot in a very short amount of time. The West Wing of the White House is a very high-pressure environment. And then after the 2020 election, I was the spokeswoman, communications director for Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who is now the House Republican chairwoman on Capitol Hill. I proudly helped her kick Liz Cheney out of that leadership position. We got Elise onto the job. And then soon after that, I came home to launch my own campaign because I was looking at all of the legislation that Chris Pappas, my representative, was voting in favor of. The Democrats and Joe Biden are literally destroying our country. We've seen incredible destruction in just 8 short months. So I threw in the towel, threw my hat in the ring, and I'm very excited to be in this race. We're gaining a lot of momentum and support from conservatives across the state of New Hampshire, and I look forward to the months ahead and getting to know voters more.
Obviously, the Trump endorsement is going to be huge in this race. How do you wrestle it away from the guy who got it in 2020, Matt Mowers, who's running again?
Well, look, I am running on President Trump's America First agenda because I proudly helped advance that in the White House press office, like I said, alongside Kayleigh. I worked for a very proud ally of President Trump on Capitol Hill, Elise Stefanik, and I am focused on earning the support of voters. I know they believe in the America First agenda, and that's what I'm running on, those policies that were uplifting families just like my own. I've been very strong on the need for less regulation in our economy, unleashing the potential of New Hampshire small businesses. President Trump did that very well. We also need to ensure election integrity. Moving past looking at 2020, how can we move forward in a positive way before 2022? My campaign launched an election integrity coalition, and we are working with great patriots across the state who are trying to do better for our election system leading up to next year.
Yeah, you launched that election integrity coalition citing, quote, irregularities here in New Hampshire. What is your specific allegation there? Because there was a lot of scrutiny on the vote here in New Hampshire, an audit in Windham. The Secretary of State, the governor, said this was a free, fair, and clean election here.
There were irregularities that occurred both here in New Hampshire and across the country, and we need to keep digging into them and getting to the bottom of them, because the truth is this. Voters, and I talk to many of them every single day, I've been crisscrossing the state, don't have faith in the sanctity of our elections right now. There's a lot we can do to improve our elections here in New Hampshire. Particularly, there's a few things. We need to get rid of same-day registration. We need to ensure voter ID. There were also anomalies that occurred in our voting machines. And you mentioned what happened in Windham. It's a perfect example of those precautions that were taken in the guise of COVID-19, particularly the mass absentee ballots that led led to chaos and irregularities. The folks in Windham were unable to test that machine ahead of time, and it resulted in miscounted votes for every candidate in that race. How many other towns, cities, wards did that happen in? We should have an audit of the state to get to the bottom of it. Voters deserve that truth and that transparency, and I'm fighting with them before 2022. We need to get this done. There are ways to improve. We should be honest with ourselves and do it. And I know that there are great legislatures in Concord who are looking to get that done. And when I'm elected to federal office next year, I will ensure that bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. keep their hands off our elections. We need to ensure state and local control.
Do you believe President Trump won New Hampshire?
I do. I do not believe Joe Biden won 81 million votes.
I mean, the votes are there. They're sitting at the state archive in Concord. Why not, instead of just dancing around, why not fundraise the money and pay for the statewide hand recount?
Yes, absolutely. That is something we should do. You saw there was a very close race in Bedford the other night. I know that there will be a recount for that race on Monday morning, and perhaps the same irregularities occurred in Windham. These are the steps that we need to take leading up to 22, and there needs to be legislation passed in Concord. And like I said, I know there's legislatures that are working very, very hard on that.
I don't want to belabor the point here, but I'd just like you to explain the mechanism of this. You believe the same people who just engineered the haphazard withdrawal from Afghanistan also pulled off the history of our country involving multiple different election systems, and they did so without leaving a trace.
I believe that the Democrat machine took over our elections before 2020 in the guise of COVID. COVID was the greatest gift that the Democrats ever received. They circumvented state legislatures across the country, which is unconstitutional. And I will also talk about the media. I believe they played a role in interfering in our election. I worked on the front lines of that in the White House. We saw literal fake news stories every single day that are now coming out, and they are now coming out as false. We knew it at the time. I believe the media played a role in election interference. How many minds of voters did that change? But we need to fix our election system leading up to 2022. Voters are demanding that, and I strongly stand with them.
Let's turn to the pandemic. You have said, quote, children should not be wearing masks, not before, not now, not ever. Are parents who choose to mask their children in schools being bad parents?
Absolutely not. That is their choice. That is their right to mask their children. It's also the right and the choice of parents to not mask their children. And that's why I'm adamantly opposed to mask mandates, to vaccine mandates, and to lockdowns. The American people have the resources that they need. Any American at this point who wants to get vaccinated can go get it. And if they want to, they should. I worked in the White House with Operation Warp Speed. President Trump had the greatest mobilization of our government resources since World War II, and now every American who wants the vaccine should go get it. But I don't believe that children should be forced to wear masks in schools. We should not be forcing folks to have the vaccine. I believe what President Biden did yesterday, the federal vaccine mandate, is unconstitutional. It's unlawful. I don't believe it's based in science. It's un-American, and I don't think American businesses should comply with that unconstitutional mandate.
Yeah, what is an acceptable level of civil disobedience in your eyes to a vaccine mandate? We saw in Concord just this last week a protest that ended a hearing on the vaccine registry.
Yeah, I support the right of Americans to peacefully protest. Look, that's protected in our Constitution. They should make their voices heard. We're at a very tumultuous time in our country right now. A lot of people are very fed up with what the Biden administration is imposing. They're infringing on our freedoms and our liberties every day, whether it's our Second Amendment right, whether it's the right of our businesses to do business. I was with a nursing home owner in Moulton Borough last week for a meeting, and he told me that he was so upset with the federal mandate for the vaccination mandate for nursing homes. 85% of his staff were vaccinated, 15% were not. And that was okay with him. He's the owner of that business. That's his choice, whether he chooses to have those vaccinated or unvaccinated individuals working for him. It's not the place of Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, or anyone in the government, quite frankly, to choose how these business owners do business. And I stand on the side of medical freedom, parental choice, and the freedom of businesses to do business here in New Hampshire.
There is obviously some civil disobedience that crosses the line. I'm curious for your perspective on the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. I believe you had already moved over to work for Congresswoman Stefanik at that point. Were you there on that day and seeking shelter from those rioters?
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. In fact, my boss, Congresswoman Stefanik, was about to take the House floor when they were shut down on the House floor. I was safe in our office. I condemned the violence that occurred on that day. I don't believe those that did it represent the America First movement or represent President Trump. We are the movement of law and order. We are the movement of defending our police, backing the blue. And the rioters who caused destruction and harm for months the year prior, Black Lives Matter and other groups that burned down American cities and burned down small businesses and killed innocent civilians, they should be held accountable, as well as those who did cause violence on January 6th. I condemned it then, I condemn it now.
There are some Trump supporters who believe law enforcement is being too hard on those people who attacked the Capitol. Do you agree?
I think that those who cause violence and destruction should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, I said that on January 6th when I was working there for Congresswoman Stefanik, and I agree with that now as well.
All right, Karoline Leavitt, we will see you out there on the campaign trail. Thanks for joining us on Close Up.